Hey, what's up, guys? I hope you're all fantastic. Today we're diving into the 1989 action classic Roadhouse, starring Patrick Swayze as Dalton, a man who lived like a loner, who fought like a professional, and who loved like there was no tomorrow. We're going back to Missouri to the Double Deuce to get Swayze crazy, so let's get into it.
It's amazing, you know. I mean, I've heard from every cable channel anywhere, if they've got ratings issues, if they want to crank their ratings, put on Roadhouse.
For me, it was like one of the greatest drive-in movie pictures ever. That kind of movie where you just go, this is crazy, but I like it.
Everybody was going to make sure this film had its moment in the sun, and it's been shining ever since.
You know, I thought you'd be bigger.
Now, Roadhouse is just one of those delightfully simple action movies from the 80s that relied on star power, masculinity and bravado and violence and plenty of sex appeal, all placed inside of a lawless, hyper-realistic world of being a bar cooler. It's a flawed film from a critical aspect, but it's also one that can lure you in with its juvenile masculinity. It's fueled by barroom action. The cast easily inflates these basic character types, and it's just a delightful trip back to the 80s action genre. Roadhouse was directed by Rowdy Herrington in what would only be his second full-feature film. He would go on to be nominated for a Razzie for Worst Director for this movie, but I mean, when looking back at Roadhouse, I think he did a fine job. It's nothing too flashy. I think the action was nicely framed with a lot of wide shots to create plenty of adrenaline-filled visuals as fights erupt and things frequently blow up. The budget was around $15 million, and Roadhouse would be released on May 19th, 1989, opening number 2 at the box office behind the Richard Pryor, Gene Wilder comedy See No Evil, Hear No Evil. The following Memorial weekend would see the release of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, so a smaller movie like Roadhouse was just bound to get swept up in the mix. It would, though, have enough legs throughout the summer to pull in just over $30 million in the U.S., with international totals bringing the number up to a respectable $61 million worldwide. But I don't think there's any doubt that this movie really took off in the home video market. That was the first place I watched Roadhouse, and my VH copy was a staple in my small movie collection as a kid, and it's been estimated that between VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, and streaming sales, that Roadhouse has grossed around $203 million on top of its box office sales, so I would consider Roadhouse to be a very underrated hit.
I want you to be nice until it's time to not be nice.
A hit that was undeniably driven by Patrick Swayze as Dalton, the man with just one name like Madonna or Cher. You don't need another name more than Dalton. The dude is just the epitome of cool. You can sense Dalton's wisdom. His intelligence just really seeps out of him, as does his experience. His calm under pressure, I think, makes him just a classic tough guy. He's the ultimate cooler. He's the best in the business, but you can sense that he both hates and loves this world of violence that he's been consumed by. Dalton has a broken past. He killed a guy. You can sense he is almost bored and definitely broken by his simplistic world, and Swayze's swagger just captures it all with ease, with a gravitas that just fits the tone of this film with absolute perfection. Kelly Lynch as the love interest absolutely simmers, both because she's stunning and because she spent way too much time in the tanning bed. Someone pull the plug on that thing because she is done. But I mean, regardless, I think she was great in this role. She conveys an intelligence that you can see Dalton's intrigued by. She has a troubled past, and the chemistry between them really does burn up the screen. Lynch is just comfortable amongst the guys. She's at times visibly amused by Dalton's lifestyle, and I think she brings the movie a charismatic female lead. She isn't really given too much to do, admittedly, but it was common for the era. However, I do think Lynch certainly makes the most of it. Next, we get to Dalton's buddy and his mentor, Wade Garrett, played up amazingly by Sam Elliott. I mean, this dude is just dripping with masculinity from head to toe, with his gray locks, his gravelly voice, his aged charm, and his unshowered look. He is the perfect counter persona to Dalton, I think, subtly showcasing the strengths of Dalton as being much younger and more refined, but still very much familiar with all the same dark circles of life that Garrett is. I think Swayze and Elliott really do shine together in this movie, and while they don't necessarily capture the same gusto as a Gibson and Glover, they do deliver that mentor-tutor bond and all the history between these characters with ease and a very natural progression. But I mean, more importantly, I think they do a great job of just capturing that macho love and respect of their friendship through just an amazing blend of cheesy lines and banter and melodrama.
Maybe I ought to kick your ass. We don't want to do this.
Now, as for the story, admittedly, it's pretty simplistic. Dalton's the mysterious cooler that comes to a small town to clean up a bar called the Double Deuce. His arrival attracts a lot of attention, and his bold moves at the bar causes his paths to cross with a local corrupt businessman that controls the entire town and essentially has an endless stable of henchmen. Dalton, of course, will fall in love with the local doctor who has a connected history with this businessman and the town. Innocent people will get caught in the crossfire of Dalton saving this town from the grip of corruption, and he will enlist the help of his longtime mentor and friend Wade Garrett along the way. Is it all traditional stuff? Absolutely, but it's also more than enough to deliver a highly engaging, quick-moving story that litters in music and sex and showdowns and collateral damage and endless barroom fights and elementary behavior and quotable lines. So many quotable lines.
I wonder if somebody calls my mama a whore.
Is she?
Do you enjoy pain?
Pain don't hurt.
I used to fuck guys like you in prison.
Want to know why you disgust me? No, why, boss? Because you're a bleeder. That gal's got entirely too many brains to have an ass like that.
You asshole! What am I supposed to do?
There's always barber college.
The film opens with Dalton in a high-class club, keeping the room cool while always looking cool doing so. The dialogue wastes no time in building the mystique of his character as he arrives to clean up the Double Deuce. I mean, everybody's heard the legend of this dude. That makes Dalton instantly appealing. You want to know more about this guy as he just abandons his life in New York City, heading out in his Mercedes to the next job like a man that's just wandering life's path. Dalton arrives in Missouri, he buys an old Buick, he fills the trunk with spare tires like he's been through this routine a dozen times. He arrives at the Double Deuce to see pro wrestler Terry Funk throwing a dude out the front door, and when he enters the Double Deuce for the first time, it's like a country version of Thunderdome, and it's just comical chaos. Dalton essentially sees issues in every direction he looks, so as the viewer you instantly know that he's going to have his work cut out for him at the Double Deuce. It's all the perfect setup for the plot. Dalton then learns more about the town and the corrupt grip that Brad Wesley has in all the businesses, so you know that Dalton has a lot more than just a bar to clean up in this movie, and while it may all be simple, it can still easily deliver a pleasant ride of hyper-masculinity, fighting, and Swayze magic if you want it to. And sure, Roadhouse is a movie you could easily sit back and pick apart from start to finish. It relies on a ton of action genre cliches. The dialogue is juvenile at best on a good day. The sex and the nudity are gratuitous, and it's certainly a predictable good versus evil theme, but I don't know, those reasons could also be described when explaining why this movie is so awesome, because I think that was the intention of this movie, to deliver some mindless, action-filled fun, and it absolutely succeeds. I think Roadhouse knows what it is. It never takes itself too seriously, and Swayze practicing his Tai Chi topless in the yard, I think, is a perfect example of that. Swayze absolutely soaks up this role with his immaculate mullet, and when Elliott steps onto the scene, I think Roadhouse is riding at full speed. There are plenty of fight sequences, both large and small, from barroom brawls to showdowns to sneak attacks. There really is no shortage of punches and kicks and destruction, but something I will commend Roadhouse for is the effort that was taken into the fight choreography, because there are like 8 or 9 sequences in this movie, and I think each of them is absolutely different from the one prior, which is something that you don't always get in an action movie. Swayze and Marshall Teague do a lot of their own stunts, which I think really allowed the camera work to pull the viewers into the middle of it all to see these characters in action. Swayze is kicking ass throughout and showing that he can certainly take some punishment as well. I mean, the dude stitches up his own cuts. It's just another day on the job for Dalton, which is just textbook 80s tough guy swagger at its finest. Plus, I think the final showdown in this movie with Dalton and Jimmy is one of the best final fights that the 80s action genre was able to deliver. I mean, these guys are going all in on one another. Harrington's direction is great. He's sitting back on the camera. It lets the actors work through the choreography. It's just pleasantly savage, closing out with a comical throat rip that is the definition of just gratuitous violence, which really was something Roadhouse kicked into hyper gear in the finale of this movie, because for the most part, I mean, despite the frequent violence, there's a subtle, lighter tone to everything. The atmosphere to me just feels much more like self-aware melodrama than seriousness. But I mean, damn, as the film closes out and characters start getting lost, it gets pretty dark. And when the final act starts inside Wesley's house and Dalton turns into Rambo, it's just an endearing bloodbath of killing and stuffed polar bears. I mean, Roadhouse certainly does have its flaws, but it also has so many awesome elements to it as well. Starting front and center with Patrick Swayze, who I think is just absolutely perfect in this character. I mean, he's the guy guys want to be friends with, he's the guy girls want to fall in love with, and he carries this gravitas with a charm and a graceful swag, almost like he was born to do it. Lynch and Elliott give the movie two more strong, appealing characters, and I certainly think Gazzara and Teague amplify basic villain templates to create a genuinely menacing hurdle for Dalton to overcome. It's all delightfully absurd, it's super cheesy, all the characters in this movie really do feel like characters. It's almost a cartoon world filled with cavemen mentality, and it's just a timestamp of the late 80s when action movies didn't need to be over the top in theme to deliver truly over the top fun. So that's been my video for today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this look back at Roadhouse, a Swayze classic. I hear Gyllenhaal is working on a remake to Roadhouse, but I mean, I wish him all the best, but I think it's going to be nearly impossible to recapture the same atmosphere of this 89 original.
This is Jack Burton in the Pork Chop Express, and I'm talking to whoever's listening out there.
Survive a war, you gotta become war.
I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
You trying to say Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?